Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Elevate podcast, the thought leadership platform designed for behavioral health executives navigating growth, innovation, and impact. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects every treatment center in the country, yet surprisingly few organizations know how to truly measure it. Most providers spend significant time and money generating admissions inquiries, but what happens after the phone rings? How many opportunities are being missed? How many families never receive a response? And how much revenue and patient impact is being lost because of admission inefficiencies? At the same time, AI, voice technology in different shapes is rapidly evolving and entering the conversation, creating both excitement and a lot of uncertainty across behavioral health. So the questions become, is AI the future admissions, or are we overlooking the value of human connection during the most important conversations a family will ever have? Joining us today is an expert on the topic. It's Mr. Drew Powers. He's the Chief Growth Officer at Rollover Rep. Drew and his team answer more than 400,000, I repeat, 400,000 behavioral health calls annually and help treatment center providers improve admissions performance, reduce the missed call rate opportunities, and better connect prospective patients with the care they deserve. So if you're a founder, CEO, executive director, admissions director, marketing etc., CMO, whatever within behavioral health, and you're focusing on growth, today this is conversation is for you. Great to have you here. Great to see you again.
It's good to
Drew,
be here with you, and we both have our tattoos out today, so we're on the tattoo podcast. I like it.
amen. There we go. So, Drew, I've been excited about having this chat with you because I think very few people know as much on this topic as you. I'm sure there's a lot of golden nuggets. Why don't you give our listeners a quick background on who you are, how did you get into this role you're currently fulfilling?
Yeah, sure. I've worked in the space, kind of cliche story. I got sober about 15 years ago, became a drug and alcohol counselor at the facility I got sober at, like a lot of people. And since then, I've been interested in doing a few different things. I was an interventionist for a while and eventually landed in doing kind of sales, business development. And I found that really interesting. I found the marketing really interesting. And in particular, what I found the most interesting about it is I thought it was fairly likable and we'd have meetings and stuff. And everybody would always say, oh, there's more than enough clients to go around. And there's always a huge need. And
Mm,
we all work together. And then like years are going by. I'm like, these people that say these things, they never refer to me. It's very strange. There must not actually be that much business going around. I was really curious about that mentality and what they were doing to be successful. Cause of course they had these treatment centers, they had a lot of patients in them. And so I was just curious. And so I started to teach myself in these sort of things, eventually wound up at a place called Sandstone Care. I was a CGO there for 8 years. We grew from a very small IOP to multi-state teen and young adult treatment. I was overseeing a fairly large team there, marketing, digital marketing, admissions and business development. And most recently, I've joined Rollover Rep, which was a longtime customer of. So I used Rollover Rep in my previous role. So quite familiar with the platform. I met the founder, Stefan, many years ago when he worked for really recovery brands before it became rehabs.com. And so we've always been good friends. And I was doing some advisor work with him before about this topic because it's funny, for 10 years, he's been beating the drum of like missed calls are important. And it now finally feels like everybody's finally talking about it, but they're talking about it through the lens of AI. And it was quite interesting to think about for his business, which has always been human centered. Where does AI come into the picture? And so he and I were batting this around. And eventually I said, I think there's something that this is something I'd really like to work on. Joined full time and it's been a blast.
fantastic. Yeah, obviously we've been a long-term partner with Rollover Rep, and we even have internal systems that when clients have a certain threshold of missed call rate that are visible in the dashboards, then our account managers is to make an introduction and really depends on against it's a difficult metrics to manage very often, especially for both smaller, larger facilities. And then depending on budget and marketing or location of different channels, it can really, it's hard to predict it when you're looking at a multi-channel marketing strategy. what's the typical, most common challenges that you incur when you're looking across your portfolio of clients? And what is some common misconceptions about how to manage the call overflows of a high performing admissions team?
Yeah, at least in terms of rollover rep, we work with people from really small to quite large. There's a big spectrum of dynamics going on in those centers, and our goal is just to help however
Mm,
we can. We do offer a bunch of different services today. So since joining at the top of the year, we've launched Voice AI. We also have a human and hybrid combination of answering through AI and humans, which we're
mm,
uniquely positioned to be able to do. We also have launched outbound dialing, and this is done with humans, not with AI. And you can think of this wellness check ins for your admissions team, optimizing your cadences. And then we've got
mm,
some other stuff that we're working on with a handful of small select clients. We do some professional services, some audits, enhancements to telephony systems, and things like this. But to answer your question, going back to thinking about these challenges, I'll answer it both from a standpoint of what we see at Rollover Rep, but also just in my experience with a high performing team and really any size team, it is just impossible, or at least not, it's not impossible, but it's quite inefficient to staff to 100% answer rate. Whether if
yeah.
you generate 30,000 calls a month and you're at 95% answer rate, that last 5% across 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year is going to cost you a
Mhm,
lot of money to staff to.
mhm,
Even if the number is 300 calls a month, maybe you have one admissions person or two admissions people. Even if your answer rate's 80% or 90%, that last little bit could cost you two more FTEs. So you might have to increase your staffing costs by 100% just to get that last little bit. And I think
yeah.
the problem with that challenge is everybody then automatically discounts that bucket of calls, whether it's the overnight calls, whether it's the calls after 10 p.m.,
Mm,
whether it's the calls in the early morning. We automatically discount them because we're not staffed to them. And our experience tells us that they're bad calls. We call them
mhm,
back in the morning and nobody answers and they're annoying. They're on our list to call and we leave voicemails and nobody ever picks up, right? But what we don't try in that world is what happens when we do answer the call the first time. And I think that just at a basic human level, like that's what we're here to do, is to reach people who are reaching out for help and be there
yeah.
when they reach out for help, because that
Mhm,
moment of time can be quite fleeting. But beyond that, you don't judge a call before it rings at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So why are you judging a call before it rings 11 o'clock? We qualify our calls after they've been answered. That's the way that it works, unfortunately. Maybe someday there'll be a
mhm,
technology that allows us to qualify before the phone rings and we can choose who we even want to pick up. But today we do have to answer it to find out what is going on the other side of that phone and if it's a good fit or not. So we believe in 100% answer rate. And really, the only way you can do that is with some sort of answering solution, at least efficiently. If you staff it yourself internally, God bless you, but you are paying quite a lot for those incremental answers.
mm,
So
yeah.
our service is designed to sit right underneath it. And that's why in my previous life, I used Rollover Rep when we had two people. One of them was me sitting in a closet with no windows, answering our phones, to 50 people in a 7,000 square foot call center. We
Mm,
had Rollover Rep that whole time because if you want to be efficient, you have to outsource
yeah.
that piece.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack there. Thanks for sharing all that. So one thing that you did mention that stood out, and this is something out of curiosity, I'm eager to learn more about. You said 400,000 calls annually that you guys are answering. I remember seeing some old stats, I believe, that you shared once in terms of which percentage of all calls you answer are after 10 p.m., after 9 p.m. until 5, 6 a.m. in the morning. What does the data say in terms of those calls that are deemed unqualified? Are they still converting into opportunities that may be at a slightly lower rate, or is it equal rate? What is the data saying actually?
We don't have two-way reporting with all of our clients, right? Some we do. And so there's a handful of case studies that we've done out there. There's two really interesting things here that I think are worth calling out. One is, for those in our names, I don't blame people this. for this at all, but people will reach out and they'll say, I really just want to address those overnight calls or the after hours calls. Okay. And that makes sense. Sure, of course. But
Mm,
most people, in fact, everybody I've ever talked to and anybody that I'm aware of misses most of their calls during their staffed hours. Your
true.
hours are staffed for a reason. That's when most of your calls come in, but which is good. You've done the right thing. That's one thing checked. But the volume, most of it as a percentage, it's the smallest, right? Overnight, if you don't
Mm,
have anybody, your miss rate is 100%. But during the day, by volume, is where people miss the most of their calls. So we have to always encourage people to walk that back and go, no, actually, it makes much more sense for us to be plugged in across the 24-hour day period. And we
mm,
will work differently with somebody when it's daytime hours than at nighttime hours. Our technology allows us to split our, whether it's AI or humans, allows us to split
mm,
our scripting based on the
yeah.
time of day so that we can either warm transfer back into the admissions department quite seamlessly and quickly if they just miss it by
Mm,
maybe a couple of seconds. I can't tell
mm,
you how many times I was taking a phone call, I hang up, and in that just that last 10 seconds, a call came in as I was hanging up, and now it's missed. But if rollover reps talking to that person, they can get it back to me, and now it's on my I'm talking
mm,
to them versus having it be a voicemail, having to call back, making sure that another call
mm,
doesn't come in during that time. So
yeah.
the other piece that's really interesting about this is there is certainly a correlation with specifically overnight being lower quality. To some extent, that's probably skewed by lower numbers. When you look at it on an individual basis, that was true of what I would see. If you don't offer certain levels of care, your overnight calls are going to be less, especially the addiction space. But the higher levels of care will do better overnight than the lower levels of care. Just the acuity of somebody calling at 3 o'clock in the morning is probably higher than the person who's calling in the 6 o'clock at night. I think there is some element of that's true. When I explain this to people a lot, like if you get 100 calls a month and the only service you offer is one IOP in one location,
Mm,
the
mm,
qualification rate of those leads is going to be lower than the day that you open a second IOP 30 minutes down the
mm,
road. And it's going to be
yeah.
lower than the day you open a detox because now you're serving a
Mm,
wider range of your calls. And
mm,
and that doesn't mean that the calls change. The calls are the
mm,
same. Your
yeah.
services change. So qualification rate's one of those funny metrics that I don't really like doing a lot of benchmarking around because of that, because it is very specific to each provider.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe just to take a step back when saying whether it's after 10 o'clock or during peak business hours where the majority of calls come in, which could be for a lot of different reasons, but very often many facilities running campaigns have ad scheduling enabled and they want to route the calls throughout that time. That's where they get more visibility, hence get more phone calls. But at the same time, if you do the math, I know you guys have an ROI calculator on your website. It's just a slight little percentage that of missed calls that has to be qualified and turned into admit, where you basically get a return on the service from months on out, right? It's significant. And the second point to that, in my viewpoint, is it's not like we are selling a software as a service here, right? It's a health service. It's a fiduciary responsibility. I always say to clients, and it's not like people are calling in to schedule a root canal that can wait. This very often they could be tipping over. And speaking of somebody who's lost people that are close to me and struggle myself, is like many folks are busy during business hours, right? Very many executives, business leaders, entrepreneurs. At nighttime is when they cope with the stress and relief. And that's when they have the time to get talked off the ledge and talked into getting success. That's when they need it the most. I just don't like the stigma of classifying it to say as before answering the phone call. To your point, I think across the board at 5 p.m., at 2 p.m., or 2 a.m. at night, there should be a responsibility of answering every single call. My notion is that it will turn into profitability as well, but the best way to say that, I would say, let the numbers talk for themselves, answer the phone calls, run a report, compare it with your CRM data and mission cycle, and then you would know it. So,
If you
so
if
let's,
you think really quick, just to respond to that quickly, because
mm,
it's such an important point. If you just think it, even if you assume they're lower quality, okay, fine. Let's say are they 50% worse? They 75% worse than a call during the day. Disregard the fact that you miss the most of your calls during business
Mm.
hours anyways. But let's just say you miss 0 calls during the day. You're the one person in the country that misses 0 calls during the day, and you only miss calls overnight. Okay, fine. And they're 75% worse overnight. Even if that your normal conversion rate might be 5% of your calls and these convert at 1%, 2%. It doesn't take long, to your point, that this is a service that pays for itself. We're structured in a way, like we're not charging people either what it would cost you to staff this yourself or that it wouldn't make sense as a return. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business. It wouldn't make sense as a business. Rollover Rep's been around for 10 years. There's really nobody else that competes with Rollover Rep, which is interesting. And I think that's mostly because it's hard. It's not because it's not a viable business. It is hard to do exactly what I just said, which is offer a 365 answering faster than 911 US based
Yeah.
agents in an economy where wages are constantly going up. It's hard to do that. You have to have really good
Yeah.
training, really good systems to do that.
Yeah. No, thank you for doing that. I think it's very important. And I typically look at it like if you're a behavioral health executive and on the marketing team and you're running campaigns, it's not, maybe it's obvious for me because I'm looking at the data every single day across 50 clients, typically hundreds of dollars per call. And only a certain percentage of these turn into viable opportunities. You really can't afford to miss any. And I guess the question for me typically when I speak with executives is that they are they are maybe reluctant to look at, they understand, okay, let's do the math. You're missing 5, 10 calls per day at this lead to VUB, lead VUB to viable rate. We could do the projections. Those calls should be converted. There's a couple of perceptions there on notions. One is I will call them back and get a hold of them. So I would like to discuss maybe a little bit how many do you actually get a hold of and what's the time frame to get are they moving on to the next facility as number one? And number two to that aspect is that they typically sit with a feeling I can sense is that, and I can recognize that as an entrepreneur, you're frustrated. You're thinking like, it's my team is not working. It should be done within house, right? Now I'm accruing excess expense. I'm already paying somebody to do that job. But as we all know, answering an admissions call, it can go a lot of different ways, and it is somebody suffering on the other end of the phone. So it's not something you can predict and say this is going to exactly take 10 minutes. Otherwise, you got to wrap it up at that point. I think the call overflow, when you're considering the cost and looking at it not just as an operational inefficiency, but looking at it as a support vehicle to drive census, kind of like where I'm typically, when speaking with executives, that's the paradigm shift that has to happen. What's your thoughts on all of that when saying that? Do you have any context to those two scenarios that I encounter with it?
Yeah, for sure. You're spot on. So answering a missed call is a revenue generating effort, right? The
Mm,
principle exists within businesses. That's why they have an admissions team to begin with. So we're just
mm,
applying the same principle. And whether that's outsourced or insourced or what have you, answering the missed call is the primary objective and the principle we're trying to address. How do we do that? It's going to look different for everybody's business. Can you afford to insource it? That's the first question. Why are you not at 100%
mm,
answer rate? If you actually dig into the data, you'll find that admissions teams, no matter what size, are often, they don't lend themselves to the predictability that you just described. Outbound dialing is a really effective methodology at using a dialer to reach people on a really predictable cadence. But most admissions teams don't do that because it's really hard to leave some portion of your agents on auto answer. And because you can't make an outbound dial and not be there with a technology, right? With a dialer. So when you're on auto answer, you're removed from other processes. So admissions teams are just generally not structured this way.
yeah,
That's okay. We go through this in business all the time, right? You go through a portion of your time as a business and growth, and you'll outsource your billing. And then eventually you might bring it in house and you'll outsource your HR. And eventually you might bring it in house and you're outsource your marketing. And then maybe you'll bring it in house. And then you might outsource it again, right? These are evolutionary kind of developmental processes depending on what's going on in the business at any given point. It's not to say that it's always right, but it is the case that it is mostly always efficient. I've spoken with at least one person who when I spoke to them, I was like, nah, you don't need rollover rep. You don't need an answering solution. But these guys had a 50-person call center that flowed over to a case management team where crisis workers that went into hospital systems. So all day long, they're crisis in the hospitals, like the recovery coaches. They're in the house. So then it would flow over to them, and then it would flow over to their BD team. And then, but this was like a 75-person chain. I was like, actually, you guys are good. But that was one person, hundreds and hundreds that we've spoken to. And I think you could develop a system like that. But again, it would be like, how many people have a crisis team working in the hospitals? I never did, but maybe you do. And maybe you can use that team efficiently.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a revenue generating multiplier. Rollover rep, at least. We're so confident in that. We just give money back guarantees left and right. If you don't see this generating an additional incremental admin in the first month that pays for itself, then we'll pay you back, because it's actually just not hard. Yes, of course, if you miss a call, some of those people, you call them back and you reach them. Great. That happens. Most of the time you don't. Most of the time you don't. Ask your admissions team. Most of the time you don't. As the person who's done those outbound calls in the morning and stuff, you don't reach a lot of those people. And that's you don't even know what these people are, because if your current system is a voicemail, only like 1 out of 20 people will leave a voicemail that you missed the call. So if only one of those people, you know what they are, and you miss 20, that means you're completely blind on who you're calling back first. So if there was if there was some element of urgency in one of those cases, you're completely shooting in the dark, whether or not you're going to call the right person back. It's just an operational risk. It could be something about a current client too, that you need to know like right away. A lot of treatment centers use their admissions team as the company's receptionist. And so you might have something going on in one of your facilities, or a parent who's really frustrated, whatever, that's just in the shuffle because you don't have a way to organize that data first thing in the morning. You don't have a way to know exactly who called, what do they need, and all this stuff, right? Yeah, there's just a lot of benefits even beyond just the fact that it pays for itself, which is a nice play.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think another interesting, and maybe you can, I'm obviously preaching to the choir here, but one thing that I've noticed is generalizing all missed calls onto one bucket. And I'm like, there's a big difference. Somebody calls you and they are referred by a professional referral, some case manager, a psychiatrist, psychologist, whoever it may be. They're not likely picking up the phone, calling the next. They're more likely to pick up, yeah. But if you segment, filter, and very often when I ask the question, I just take a step back. Do you know how to create a filter as for the missed call by source? And that will really dictate whether or not they know yes or no. But if it's a paid search, missed call, they're not loyal to your brand. They search addiction treatment near me or XYC best facility for XYC criteria, then they're on to the next. And I don't know the specifics for our industry, but I know from many other industries that your conversion rate drops by 400% just in a matter of minutes with a callback from a form submission, for example. So with somebody who's picking up the phone and calling, and the likelihood of them calling somebody else that will pick up afterwards, I almost say it's almost a marketing suicide if you're at least putting dollars into a campaign and not have a preferably 100% response rate. Where I think that's where the sometimes doesn't necessarily make sense to me. And I think it's because they maybe don't have the full data set in front of them. If you would know that these calls that were missed came from a paid search campaign that you're spending tens of thousands of dollars for, it's a given. Besides the fiduciary responsibility, you should be responding them, because otherwise you're losing opportunities. Is that, how often would you say when folks reach out to you? Because I guess that's a segment into the next comment I have, is like are they looking at this as a conversion rate optimization tool, method, partner, or are they looking at it as a cost center when you start speaking with?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know exactly what's in folks' minds, but I think at some level, they heard, oh yeah, you should use a service to answer your calls. By the way, there's lots of answering services out there. When I said Rollover Rep has no competitors, so you can get the one that answers for your plumber when you call them. But we're the only one that's specific to behavioral health. And
Sure.
so the interesting thing here about all of this is, first of all, it's 5 minutes or less for forms, and which is why we developed our outbound program, because most people their admissions team are doing a billion different things. One of those is they're doing outbounds They take a lot of time. They're dialing, they're waiting, they're leaving voicemails. It's a total wait. It's a minute by minute. It's a highly inefficient process for that call center. So we launched
Yeah.
our outbound program to augment them so that they only get the transfer when we reach somebody, right? So now it's a true
I love
inbound
that.
call. And that's
I love it.
just such an amazing program. It's having such great success. It's hard to do with AI, by the way. AI, we tried it, it doesn't work so well. But with humans, it works quite well.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm interested in telling you about there though is with every person we talk to, there's always a gap somewhere between, and it doesn't really matter what the number that comes out of my mouth is when they ask, how much is this going to cost, between what they think it's going to cost and what it does cost. And I don't know what exactly drives that, but the easiest way to break it down, I explained it to somebody the other day, said it's probably going to cost you around $3,000 a month. It's like, oh, geez, that's a lot. Yeah. They're like, oh, we could hire a whole nother FTE for $6,000 a month. It's like a half a FTE. I said, yeah, that's one way to look at it. I said, another way to look at it is there's 720 hours in a month. And so you're paying about $3 an hour to get 24/7 coverage. Can you hire an FTE at $3 an hour? No.
That's it. Very,
It's not. It's
very.
not what minimum wage is in the United States right now, is it? No. So we're not comparing apples to apples. When you just hire another FTE, I don't care if that's 50% more staff for you or 1% more staff for you, you're not getting the same output. Okay. So it's very hard to
Mhm.
benchmark against those two things. But if somebody comes to you and they've truly thoughtfully looked at their call volume and they've said, here's when I miss the most calls. Here's what my schedule looks like across the days. Here's how many FTEs I need to address this to get to 100%. That cost will be 5x, 6x what ours will be. So that's the biggest gap for people is just, I think it's sticker shock at some level of what it will cost. And there are cheaper options out there. Of course, we offer voice AI now because that's a much cheaper option. It costs cents on the minute to run voice AI
Yeah.
today. So you can do that if you can't afford it. We can also augment some of your volume. One of the biggest complaints we get is people like, oh, I hate paying for calls that are spam or junk. I hate paying Rollover
Sure.
Rep for that. Okay, you pay your internal staff a lot more to answer those calls. I'd be starting there first with how to address the amount of spam you get. And we help people with that too. A lot of people don't realize the benefits of an IVR, for example. That's all good and fine. One of the things we can do is we can take some element of these calls and route it to AI. So maybe you get a lot of questions about directions to your outpatient program. I don't know. And you can give that to an AI agent or your billing team. Billing, you have an option in your IVR for press 3 for billing. It rings to your admissions team anyways. Let's move that over to AI because the billing team's never available. These types of things we can augment and
Mhm.
lower the bill, but still protect the most important calls. And this is just true for us. We have voice AI, but I will say it now because it's a decent segment that we're in here. It is just generally the right thing to do to answer a behavioral health call with a human. And I don't think anybody's really saying that right now. But if you go around and you call treatment centers looking for help, and a lot of them, they don't pick up, and that's incredibly frustrating and disheartening in and of itself. But if you reach a voice AI agent in that process, sure, some people are compliant with it or whatever, but there's a lot of people who just will not interact with the voice AI today. And we've seen that in our own data. We're not just,
Yeah.
spouting that out. We want to be responsible with this stuff. And this is a healthcare business, is a healthcare field at the end of the day. Like you were saying earlier, we're not selling widgets. This isn't your local plumber. It's responsibility. And the thing that I think it boils down to is, and a lot of people maybe don't fully understand this, but in this industry, if you look at your admissions department as a sales team, you have to ask yourself what they're selling. And they are not selling your product a lot of the time, or maybe all of the time. If we were just selling products, everybody would just be going to the nicest treatment center that they can go to that
Mhm.
takes their insurance. What are the pictures? Send me the
Mhm.
pictures. What does that look like? Okay, I'll go there. It's not what we're selling. We're selling trust, relationship, compassion, hope. These are emotions that humans have. And unfortunately, AI doesn't. And that's one of the biggest gaps, I think, is that if you're talking to an AI, you already know it can't care about you.
Mm,
It can't
mm,
have any concern about what happens to you. It's not that look, I'm not anti-technology. I use AI all the time. I just used it today to help me make a slide deck. It's wonderful. Claude is wonderful. ChatGPT is wonderful. What I'm saying is we're in a healthcare industry where people are reaching out. Just around 1% of our calls have to be referred to 988. Those are people that are wanting to kill themselves and they're reaching out to a treatment center to get help, right?
mm,
It is important. 988's not staffing their lines with voice AI
mm.
because
Yeah.
that for that exact reason is that's the product that they sell is compassion and care and
Yeah.
hope and resource. So yeah, I just think that's important to say.
Mm.
And I think that we should all be responsible with our technology. And a good friend of mine, Steve Denai, is going to be doing a really neat talk coming up at the recovery.com summit on
Yeah, I'm
AI
looking forward
and
to it.
compliance and these types of things. It's going
Yeah.
to be really interesting.
Yeah. We were at the panel last year at the Recover Summit. One of my favorite people in the industry. So such a wealth of knowledge. So I feel let's talk a little bit on AI here. I know we're coming up on time perhaps soon, but I feel like everybody and the mother right now is telling AI, right? AI conversations. And I'm by no means no expert, but I know enough to be dangerous, I believe. And we also know that if you have AI, it's about training a model. Take away the perspective of it's hard for AI to do that, speak with emotional intelligence as an experienced admissions reps has been in recovery can speak to. And like, I think it was maybe 6 months ago, we saw many clients that actually some had worked with you guys or others, and they were like jumping onto the AI wagon right away and actually ended shifting back to human answered overage of calls because it just didn't work. When you're talking about your solutions as an AI to answer concurring additional calls where there is overflow as an option, is that truly from a cost perspective, where you then recommend to say, like, you can add it on. If you don't want the premium, then you can have this as a more cost effective because it's still better than not answering the call at all. And how would you say that your models are better than many others? And I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm just thinking if you guys have answered 400 calls a year for 10 years, must have a pretty good understanding of how a call flow patterns that there may be.
Yeah, we didn't start at 400,000 calls a year, it ramped up, but
Sure.
millions of calls have been answered by Rollover Rep. And here's the thing. It's a wonderful layup for me to just knock it out of the park with the sales pitch. So I appreciate that. However, I will say voice AI, everybody has the same technology. They all run off the LLMs. They're all fed through it's just transcribing the words, and then it's thinking about what to say based on the knowledge base. So the only proprietary piece of that entire puzzle is the knowledge base and the prompting that you give the voice AI. Is Rollover Rep better positioned to give prompting to the AI because we've answered millions of calls? Sure, maybe. I just think there's still an inherent difference. Like, it really doesn't matter. We don't see people hanging up on the AI because it wasn't good enough. They hang up on the AI because it's AI.
Yeah.
They hang up because they know it's a robot. Hello. That's
Mm.
what I do. If I call Comcast, I'm trying to do something with my internet. I'm just yelling at it to get me to a human. Because agent. Yeah, no, wait, is this, can I say agent now? When we all do this, okay? Because we're conditioned to believe that the AI is incapable. And it is to a large extent. Even in a world where it gets more capable, we'll have this process to get over as a society because we don't trust it to do what we need it to do. Okay, fine. We get to that point. It's good enough. It really does do all the things. It can put you into treatment. It can do your pre-screens, and somehow all the regulators and insurance companies are okay with that. And it can schedule the admission, all of it. It does it all. Great. You're still going to have a lower conversion rate than you will with humans. I promise you that. I'll bet my salary for the next 5 years on that because we don't sell a product in this space. There will be industries that works totally fine for. I just don't believe it's behavioral health. And that's unfortunate for anybody that's doubling down big on AI voice. What I do think will happen is AI assistance, agent assist type of technologies that will get better and
Mm.
better and better over time so that the human can say the right things at the right time. You
Yes.
know, It's listening, it's telling you, okay, here's this obstacle, here's the best practice for this obstacle overcome. Here's the time to do the value bombs and drop all the things that we do really well. Here's the point where we
Mhm.
want to start wrapping. It's going to assist the agent, which is going to allow you to allow you to hire a lower caliber of admissions coordinator than you currently have to hire. So you will get cost
Mhm.
saving, you will get efficiency, you will get better conversion rates as a result of this technology. But if you
Mhm.
just fully augment your humans, you're not going to. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. So what is AI going to be? If you're only speaking to an AI voice, what is it going to be? Most likely it's going to be a voicemail. That's why we call it better than a voicemail. It's just like it's voicemail 2.0 for businesses, right? If your alternative was that this person was going to leave a voice message, whatever, now we have a technology. I can integrate it into your CRM with structured data fields that we can pull in reports. We can give you all the prioritization of who needs to be called back first and what happened overnight and these sort of things. It can transfer to your agents. It's
Mhm.
voicemail on steroids. It's wonderful for these types of things. However, is that better than a human doing those same things? Because you do get some amount of people that are just not willing to interact with it. They'll hang up, just like people do with a voicemail. Why do only one of 20 people leave a voicemail? Why doesn't everybody leave a
Mhm.
voice? Same
Sure.
reason that people don't always engage with the AI voice. I just think it's really important for people to be practical about these things. Nothing
Mhm.
has changed in the landscape dramatically. You basically just have Chat GPT that's talking to you. Everybody has an
Yeah.
Alexa in their house that uses AI. This isn't a new technology. And our industry, I think, really should be responsible because we're dealing with people's lives. And I think it's important to do that. So we offered voice AI for the exact reason that you said earlier, Gary. We saw some of our customers leaving and some of them came back and we go, okay, that's not a good journey for them. Why don't we allow people to try it? And in worst case scenario, they try that by themselves and then we can measure it with them
Mhm.
and show them the difference between a true A/B test between what was happening with your calls on humans. We captured 98% of your insurance information with humans. Why are we only capturing
Mhm.
5 to 10% with the AI voice? Right? What are these
Mhm.
differences and what are the impacts of that? But
Mhm.
or we can still back it up, right? So AI voice, normally people talk about, they go, escalate responsible AI voice companies. They say escalate it to a human, of course, under these circumstances. But if your admissions team is 2 people, you cannot just
Yeah.
escalate to a human whenever you want. Not at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can't. So Rollover Rep designs these hybrid solutions where even if you want AI first, so you're like gung ho on it, it's the next best thing. Great, allow us to sit right around that so that if there is an escalation, if there is an abandoned call right away, we can initiate an outbound with a human and try to recover it. We can be the
Right.
escalation path at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we're just
Sure.
a more holistic approach to AI
Yeah.
that I think works a little bit better, but we always try to
Yeah.
get people on humans. It's our
It's
number one goal.
so you clients come to you, they can do an a la carte. As for first it's going to human, additional call over which goes to AI, escalations then go back to human. And then from my understanding, you can also plug and play the agents to call all these missed calls or opportunities that went cold as they're waiting and on a
Yeah.
pay transfer fee.
Yeah, so outbound's a little works a little bit different than the rest of our service.
Mm.
So this is new. It's actually something that I asked Rollover Rep for years to do. So when I came on board, I was excited to actually do it. So what we've done is the way this literally works is because we have enterprise level telephony on our end, which not everybody does. You can't run a dialer on Ring Central or CTM, right? We have enterprise level telephony. We have automated dialing, power dialing that we can use. What we've done is we've
Mhm.
taken our best agents that have been with us a long time. We've updated our scripting system to be able to work in a variety of outbound scenarios. And we use our human agents to initiate outbound calls to lead lists that the customer provides to us. So this is
Mhm.
something like everything from maybe here's my alumni that I want to check in with. We've
Mhm.
actually augmented an alumni function where somebody would be otherwise using an alumni coordinator. We most often are just calling cold leads. So admissions teams are really good usually at calling the leads that came in yesterday and this week, and then it falls off, right? We don't keep up with the cadence.
3 calls, that's it from my experience.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, exactly. If I was just talking with somebody today who we did an audit for, and I asked them for what's the expected cadence of your team up front. And I showed them there's really actually no examples of your team following this cadence across thousands of calls we analyzed. It's of course very hard. They're very busy. I'm not dunking on the admissions coordinators, but it's actually a responsibility of management to figure out how to get that reporting in a better place. But the outbound program is so fun because the customer only pays when we transfer a lead. So this is somebody, you gave us the list. We just dialed out. And then when we reach somebody, we run a script. It's something like what their team already does when they do a push, like census is down. We got to call all the detox leads from last month. It's the same type of thing. It's just we're doing it in the background for them. Hey, you reached out to us in the past. We just wanted to check in, see how everything's going. Is there anything we can do for you? Or, hey, you were in treatment with us a while ago. We just wanted to check in and make sure you're doing okay. Do you need any help? Did you follow your discharge plan? And a lot of the time people are like, no, hey, great. Hey, thanks for calling. No, everything's fine. It's a great branding effort.
Yeah.
A lot of people are honestly appreciative. There's also people that are like really frustrated and annoyed. Don't call me again, which is why admissions teams don't like doing it. They like the feel good conversations. I don't blame them. And then there's this one magical call. I was just thinking about you guys and I just didn't have it in me to pick up the phone, but I totally need to go back to treatment. And we say, great, let me get you over to somebody in the admissions department right now. Transfer. And the pricing, the way we've done this today, probably subject to change as we continue to see a lot of really good success with it, is we charge only for that transfer. Whether you pick it up or not is on you, but basically we generate this lead, this qualified lead who's looking to come into treatment. As long as you don't give us a list of your unqualified leads, it's a qualified lead for you and they're actively ready to come in. And we charge just for that. And we charge about what we expect people to be paying on PPC for a qualified lead. And it's a mechanic that will boost your conversion rate dramatically. And let's just say worst case scenario, here's the worst case scenario. You give us 10,000 leads and we dial on those leads and you get no transfers. You don't pay anything. You've paid zero. There's no base fee. There's no subscription. There's no nothing. You pay nothing. And it's really neat.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate, just looking at numbers from admissions teams and marketing campaigns every day, all day, that's a slam dunk offer just to get increased return on efforts because it rarely happens. I know it's in an ideal world, admissions teams in between calls should be taking up the phone, but they have a hard job. Man. They're speaking with emotions and back to back for several hours. Maybe they need a little break. So it just doesn't never happen from my experience. People have their intentions. It's like they want to go to the gym 6 days a week, but they rarely do it 6 days a week, right? So this is one of those things where I'd say that's a slam dunk offer. Yeah.
Thanks.
If anybody's interested in that, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Drew, to talk more about that at Outbound or any of the
our website, which is in the process of being updated. God bless this company. It's been around for 10 years, never done any marketing. I think this is maybe the most marketing we've ever done being on this podcast with you, and never done a PPC. The website ranks for nothing. And it's all word of mouth. Everything's been people that just love the business, want to refer to us. But you can go to our website, rolloverrep.com. You can also email me anytime, drew@rolloverrep.com. I'm happy to talk. We do free audits for people. If you've got like a CTM account or something, you can plug us in there. We'll take a look. We'll tell you exactly what's going on, what you're missing, where you're missing it. Sometimes people don't even know how to do that much. Maybe they have an admissions person who's telling them, I never miss a call. I always answer. But maybe they have some suspicions, but they don't know how to do that. We can do it for you. We'll provide a free audit, free consultation. We'll show you what's going on. If you're missing any best practices, and missed calls often get mixed up with abandons in people's minds. They don't realize there's a difference. So we like to look at those things and call them out for people so that they know the difference between somebody that's actually abandoning in your IVR because your wait time's too long versus a true miss. Because the admissions coordinators, they don't always think about the abandons like a missed call. I think that these are all important things. So we'll do that for free for people if they want it. And that's usually a good way to start. And we just try to, generally speaking today, we just try to see what can we do to help. A lot of times we start with just doing some professional services work today. If we can help with whether somebody just recently, they were not sure why had uneven distribution to their agents, right? They're like, we've got 9 people. They should all be getting roughly the same amount of calls over the course of a month, but these 3 take 50% of the calls. They couldn't figure out
Mhm.
why. So we looked into and
Mhm.
tried to figure that out and created a solution for them. So we can do a bunch of things. We're not just a single solution, more of a suite of services today. Small team, but nimble and mighty.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for that that solution. I think many facilities may need this without knowing. So thank you for offering it. I highly encourage everybody listening to this call to take advantage of that offer of a free audit. It may shine light on some opportunities that you may not knew as representing your business that could also lead to reducing costs for that matter from a marketing standpoint or getting you to that extra level next level from a census standpoint. And especially the outbound. I'm absolutely as a long time sales enablement dude, that's like the slam dunk to take advantage of that. That's just like money sitting there, getting ready to pick up and helping people that need it. Good. So last but not least, Drew, let me ask you, because you are a seasoned player in this industry and have been wearing a lot of different hats and now Chief Growth Officer at Rollover Rep. If you had a magic wand and you're looking at this as an industry improvement, if you could send a message out to all the admissions directors, all the executives facilities in terms of what should they be looking at right now in terms of improving census and improving the admissions flow, what would you tell them?
Yeah, big question. If I had a loudspeaker for the whole industry, I think, look, so many people are different. I will say that we talk to a lot of facilities. A lot of people are struggling right now. I think it's a difficult time in this industry. And I actually just did another podcast with another friend of mine. We were talking about competition, a lot of that conversation. I think people aren't always even aware of what's going on in their own markets and how much competition has probably come into them. While there is probably some difficulty going on there, people might not be at their optimal census that they want to be. And they're trying to tighten their belts and these types of things. We've certainly seen it. People trying to cut costs wherever they can, cut and rollover rep costs for AI voice and these types of things. My recommendation in general is if you can, don't cut the things that generate revenue. That's generally, if you want to survive, one of those things. Businesses are very durable, but you have to handle those things right. It's not fun and easy, but don't cut the things generating the revenue. Find ways to be more efficient, work harder, outsource some things. Outsourcing is a wonderful tool, can be very efficient. And it doesn't mean that you're going backwards, but it does mean you're going through one of those evolutions. And like I said earlier, sometimes outsourcing makes sense. I think the unfortunate reality is that there will be some amount of thinning in this industry over the next 3 to 5 years. Some extents probably due for that with a lot of the investment that's come into this industry over the last 10 to 15. And there are a lot of saturated areas. I hope that people are utilizing good resources like Elevate for digital marketing and make sure that they're standing out in the internet, making sure they're thinking ahead about their SEO strategy and the LLM landscape, and that they are in their website, making sure their website is prepared for the LL landscape, working with good providers like recovery.com to make sure that they are betting on the reputable directories out there and diversifying their acquisition through business development and digital and everything else. But if you're struggling, it's the time to optimize the systems that generate revenue, not cut them.
Amen. Very well said. Very well said. Double down on those efforts. That's what's going to take you out of the slump or at least get you through the hard time that most facilities go through. Yeah. Drew, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge today and all these. I feel we should almost should have a round two soon because we could talk probably for an hour more about a lot of other topics, but this was very valuable. So appreciate your time and keep up the good work. Will you be at the Recover.com Marketing Summit as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be on a panel there, something about marketing.
Good. Oh, okay. Okay.
I'll be there with bells on. Yeah.
I'll see you soon then, my friend.
All right, Gary. Thanks.
All
Bye.
right. Thank you again. Bye. Thank you for tuning into the Elevate podcast. If you liked the content you heard today, make sure to subscribe to the channel and share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next show.